Jumping back then to the more product-specific regulations, so the EU Batteries Regulation is one of these pieces of legislation that is aimed to introduce minimum requirements on performance and information for specific product groups on the EU market. So it's quite in line with the ESPR framework legislation, but it is one of the first that has come into place to really tackle a certain product group or a certain type of materials. So it was adopted in 2023 and phased-in requirements are starting from 2025 up until 2030. The aim is to minimise the environmental impact of the obvious growing demand that we have for batteries through the introduction of circularity requirements. It applies to all batteries that are sold in the EU market, although requirements will vary according to the type of battery, but this will include requirements on portable, industrial, automotive and electric vehicle batteries across their entire life cycle. So this will mandate minimum performance requirements, the provision of information, again, through digital product passport, and this will include due diligence information, so making sure that attempts are made to identify, mitigate against, and prioritise impacts relating to due diligence through the sourcing of batteries' entire life cycle. Non-compliance will include restricted market access, product recalls, and fines that are introduced through national authorities. The next piece of legislation then that is quite important and has been quite widely discussed through its development is the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. So this entered into force in 2025 and requirements are coming in on a staggered basis from 2026 up to 2030. The aim is quite obviously to reduce packaging waste and promote reusable and refillable alternatives through the introduction of circularity requirements in packaging. The regulation covers all types of packaging that is placed on the EU market, regardless of its material or origin, although different requirements apply to different types of packaging. And again, different sectors have different requirements under this piece of legislation. This includes business to business and e-commerce. The implications of this regulation will mean that certain single-use packaging and use of certain substances of concern will be banned by 2030. And the requirements include recycling, inclusion of recycled content within packaging, requirements for reuse and take back are required by 2029 or 2030, depending on the provision. Non-compliance include penalties, market restrictions and enforcement actions that will be taken by member states, and this can include bans on non-compliant packaging. The last piece of sourcing regulation or of product regulation that we'll talk about is for our friends in the construction sector, so the Construction Products Regulation. So this will apply from January 2026 and transitional provisions will be coming into place until 2027. The aim of this regulation is to establish a harmonised set of rules for the marketing of construction products that will enhance the market functioning, the safety and the sustainability of products that are being used in the construction sector. So it applies to construction products and different parts and materials therein. It applies to manufacturers, importers and distributors and online marketplaces, and the requirements for each piece of regulation varies depending on the actor in question. So the implications of this means that it will introduce stricter market surveillance, digital information requirements, and this can include environmental product declarations, clear responsibilities for economic actors, and then this has the overall goal of ensuring product compliance in a harmonised way across the entire construction sector. One more time, the non-compliant products may be subject to removal or recall from the market, and authorities are empowered to take corrective actions on sanctions imposing these. One final note before moving on, I realise a lot of the non-compliance actions I have mentioned are the same, and that is because in the EU regulations that are set out, it's left down to the member states to enforce what the different penalties and sanctions will be. The EU mandates that these sanctions must be effective, dissuasive and proportionate, but we'll be keeping an eye on what these all look like in practice as these different regulations are starting to be enforced.